What is up, guys? Episode 36 of Drinks and Dogs. It's been a few weeks, KD.
36. Yes,
Right?
it has been. It has. We've both been busy. We've both been real busy.
It's definitely been nuts. It's I didn't really think it was like that long since we've talked. But I mean, it's been 3 weeks now that I looked up what number it was right now. I was like, dang, it's been that like long since we've talked or we've done one of these shows.
Yeah, and we haven't spoken really in between either.
It's
Outside of you
quick.
checking up on me, which I always appreciate. And
Yeah,
the timing is always good. Like I'll be like right in the middle of something. And lately when you've texted me, it's like I've actually been off track. And I get a text from you like, "What's up, brother? How's this going? How's health? How's extra?" I'm like, "Oh, that's right, man. Like, that's right. Thank you." So, I appreciate stuff like that. I think more people need to do that for each other.
Oh, that's fucking like one of the things like this year, especially like after like, the first part of this year and everything, that was going on that we've talked about and just being like busy. I was like, man, that's something like I want to get better at, at least like with like my friends and stuff like that. It's like, make sure like, check in, like, gotta have like this full blown conversation. But hey, like everything's good. Just, make sure everyone's like cool and, checking in. Cause I mean, that stuff helps, that stuff helps me. I know that for sure, especially with how
Well,
busy life can get.
it's yeah, and you never know. You never know how your message is going to help someone in a moment, right? So I had put a post on my Instagram. I think it was an Instagram story a couple weeks ago, maybe like 3-4 weeks ago. And it was just like text somebody today something nice, someone who doesn't expect it but absolutely deserves it. Because it's like you never know how a simple, unsolicited message can change someone's entire day.
Yep.
Whether it's checking up on them because now they feel like, hey, someone's thinking about me, someone cares, or like just outright saying, hey, I really like the way you do this, like completely out of nowhere. That's huge. You never know. And we get so used to, I think what's really effed up is I think a lot of people spend more time communicating with people they don't like because of social media, communicating with people that have no value to them, than they do communicate with the people that freaking matter. How about that for some like, wow, wait a minute. Like if everyone listening to that right now sat and thought how much time they spend interacting with people that they actually have strong disdain for or
Yep.
distaste for, or people that have no value in their life. And it's like, when's the last time you talked to your parents, or when's the last time you talked to your brother, your sister, your kids? I mean, come on.
And it's like, I think the one thing too, it's about a lot of presence, like, because that brings up a really good point. Like me and obviously, like, like my situation here, like, Aaron is the general manager of Primal Canine. We're together a lot. I do see my daughter, very frequently and with them, but you can get caught up in like business to where, you're doing all the things, you're talking to all these people, you're working all these business things out. But the amount of present time that you're spending with these people who are significant in your life is becoming decreased because you're spending so much time, doing all this busy work. But you start to, I noticed it at least part of last year when I was like really stressing out at the end. I'm like, man, I'm stressing out about all this other stuff and work and spending time doing all this other work for, people who probably don't really give a shit really, at the end of the day. And when I could be having, the time I have where I can spend time with like my daughter, with my, with Aaron, and be present and be there and actually, spend time with them, talk to them just like normal, like a normal relationship, and, have those things. And once I started focusing on that and started thinking about that stuff, or even like just general friends, checking in here and there with people who have, because I have a very small group of like people I'd actually consider like my friends, and if, a very small group that I'll check in with and just kind of BS with here and there. And once I kind of really started looking at that, my relationships became better, which is the most important thing, because people who are important to you, you want those relationships to be good and healthy. And then two, like, it actually did something a little bit for me on the selfish side, where it was like, okay, like I felt like a lot more complete instead of just being like burnt out, like, being able to, like, for example, like today I drop off Ivy on Tuesdays, before we go into media day and everything like that. And like, I had the last couple of days with her where we were just like, we're chilling, and kind of just hanging out. I was able to do my dad duties and everything. And it was just real cool. It was a good recharging feeling. Or the podcast that I missed when you guys were texting and me and the family were out at in Carmel or in Pebble Beach, and like I hung out with Ivy and Aaron for like three straight days out there, and with minimal time on my phone or talking to people, and like just being recharged with focusing on those relationships was super good, and just super overall just very like recharging too.
I've been being way more deliberate and conscious about where I physically put my phones because of what you just said. Like, and that's where I'm going. Like, I'm coming right off of what you were just talking about being present, right? Like, man, I've been bad about that in the past of, having so much of what I do is involving the internet, man. Like social media is like I'm constantly on it. I have to be. I'm in my email. Like there's a lot of things going on when I'm not like working in my other company, which is like I have to that when I'm working in my other company, like my phones are nowhere in this office at all. They can't be. But like I wasn't doing that with like friends and family. So now I'm like, no, I've actually started doing something that I haven't done like ever. And that is I leave my work phone at home sometimes now. Like when I go out to do social stuff, like I don't even freaking bring it, man.
Yeah.
And some people might be like, well, why? No, like it was everywhere with me. Like I have two phones. I have the personal phone, which is the iPhone, because I really don't talk to a whole lot of people on it, and I hate iPhones. So I figured, that if you got to have an iPhone, I want it on the phone I use the least. Um, and then I have the good old Android for everything, work related. Well, so this bad boy has been staying home. Has been if I'm interacting with friends and family, it stays like in my fanny pack away. Like I make it like 2 steps, like a gun, like a Florida gun law, right? Like 2 steps away. That's how I treat my cell phone so that I don't get caught up so I can be more present.
I've been doing I haven't necessarily gone as far as staging on like putting it in places, but I do this thing now where like I just flip my phone like around so the screen doesn't light up. So I started catching myself when I started making like this transition, like in the last, or just behavioral, I guess, transition in the last, like this last year, or in like this year time frame, where I would just catch myself looking at it. Like it almost becomes like, because whether you get text messages, phone calls, the thing just lights up. Like you just naturally start doing this like irky jerk like maneuver, and I'm like, dude, what the hell am I doing? It's just you're anticipating like constantly responding to people, talking to people, and all these other things. So I just started flipping it over, and now it's like I don't even really do it anymore. That's what I was like. I had to make sure once you brought that up, I was like, let me make sure this shit's flipped over, put away over there. That way, I'm not catching myself, whether it's a reflection off the light, or whatever it may be,
It's all that
staring at my phone.
dopamine, man. It's that dopamine cycle, the dopaminergic process. Good old Andrew Huberman, right? Like, have you listened to that episode yet?
No, so what's the last one I just listened to? So I don't know if I told you this, but I started taking this stuff called NMN. I don't know the whole, but it's supposed to like restructure like your DNA, household recovery. Like it's like an anti-aging thing. It really does like help a lot. I'll shoot you offline a picture of the bottle. But it does like help out a lot. And like that was the last podcast I listened to was with him and Joe Rogan, and they were talking about that specifically, and how that they how they were taking it and all this other stuff like that. So that's the last like thing I've listened to of his. But I have a
Um,
pretty backlog on that.
I kind of like cherry pick because he's got so much content. So the dopamine one was one of the first ones I went to, just from my own kind of curiosity and familiarity. Um, with that neurotransmitter and how it works, and listening to him and like how he breaks things down. Oh my gosh, it makes you want to take your cell phone and smash it into a million pieces,
Yeah.
because once you learn really how dopamine really works, and I don't just mean the way a lot of dog trainers toss it around,
Yeah.
they pick because they, whatever. But like, I mean, like how it really, really like the science of it in a broad spectrum, like not specific to any species, right? And yeah, it makes you want to destroy your cell phone. Makes you want to never have it anywhere near you ever again, because you realize how much your cell phone is freaking your brain up.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it's, and someone might say, well, it's the internet on the phone. Well, whatever you want to call it, tomato, tomato. Like the phone is the freaking vessel. It's the vessel for just so much stuff that's going to mess with your brain. So that's a good episode you got to watch. Um, Another episode that really that hit me was his no al his well his episode where he explains what alcohol does to you.
Oh
And
yeah.
that was the nail in the coffin for me. What I'm March, just over a month without a single drop of alcohol.
Yeah, you got it.
Um,
You're definitely about a month because we did that one episode and then you weren't drinking then. So that was, yeah, that was what, 4 weeks ago.
yeah, I think it was March 15th or something, or 17th. I don't remember the day. It was that week that I finally said, nope, we're gonna do 1 year. We're gonna do 1 year, zero alcohol. And
Nice.
like that, when he was breaking that down, it made it a no-brainer. Like, yeah, I knew it was something I should do, something I wanted to do, something that man, you can't not benefit from that. That's a win-win.
Yeah.
But then when I like nerded out on it and like listened to him explain what it does, I was like, oh yeah, yeah, okay.
Is that the
I be gone.
is that the one he did with Bert Kreischer?
Well, no, I listened to Huberman's
Huberman
podcast. I
Labs
think
one?
yeah, Huberman. It was a Huberman Lab episode. Now he's done
Okay.
I I saw pieces of the one he did about Bert, but I haven't seen the whole thing in its entirety. I just watched like the Huberman Lab episode where he just runs through all his nerd stuff, in layman's terms. So it's for anybody out there, can't recommend that stuff enough to some of those episodes, like the stuff he breaks down. And in particular, yeah, I mean, I think everyone should kind of reconsider certain aspects of their lives that could potentially result in some benefits. It's been interesting socially. Like,
Oh, I believe it.
holy crap, man. You want to talk about association, associative learning, like all this stuff we drop when we're, talking about dogs and how dogs learn, man. I mean, it's wild to me how like awkward, slightly anxious I felt when I went to my first bar since I stopped drinking. Because at first I was like, I'm not, oh, you can't go there anymore. It's like, well, why not? Like, I have a couple bars I really like going to because I really like the people there. Like, I know the staff, I enjoy talking to the people that are there. A lot of my friends go there. Like, wait a minute, like, it's not the alcohol, right? So screw it. Like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
go and I'm gonna experience this. And man, at first it was like, can I get an unsweet tea? Like, can I get ginger ale on the rocks? And I, once I got over the novelty of like, whoa, this is different. Some people had some things to say, and I had some things to say back, and it was all good. Um, but at first, it was like, whoa, I had like this associate. You pair these things, this experience. You pair them. It was mind opening to go through that, and now it's doesn't. It only lasted for like a little bit, and like I've gone several times. I've gone out and hang out with people that are drinking around me. Like, doesn't bother me. I'm not like, it's like, yeah, I'm not doing that right now. Hey, I might.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you quit forever. I'm like, I don't know. I'll let you know in a year, because I
Yeah.
made a vow. At this point, it was an oath. It's just like I made an oath. I told all the people that I'm like socially accountable to, like, this is what I'm doing, hold me accountable. Um, that's it. That's all it is at this point. Like, I'm not on a soapbox at all. I'm not, just I'm doing this for a year. Maybe after a year I'll have a beer or something, or I'll have a bourbon. I don't know.
Yeah. It's just that it's funny how people like treat like especially the alcohol thing. Like it's like this weird like I don't know what the right word for it is, but like it's
Why aren't
always
you
just
drinking? Why aren't you having it?
yeah.
Whoever says that about, why aren't you going to do a line of coke?
Yeah.
What do you mean you're not going to smoke crack? What's wrong with you? Are you a loser? It's like
Right.
nobody says that.
It's like a weird stigma thing. I mean, so I'll 100% like especially like on like the like just the association or the behavioral thing like especially for me like typically like if I'm like going to be in a heavily social like environment where it's not pertaining to work, like obviously because like work environments have to be different, but like it's like alcohol is typically involved just so I can kind of just have a little more of a buffer and just kind of just be like, all right, like I can kind of relax and I hate to say it this way, but like tolerate people just because for the most part, like I'm kind of just more what I think it's an introverted is the term. Like when I'm just like normal, like me stuff. But I did notice because I've done this like a bunch of times, just getting healthy and like even when back in competitive days or even a year or two ago when I was like the one sober for about like 10 months or some stuff, and even now, well after I showed you that the whoop info about after I drank on that the 10 year,
I
and then
remember.
and then the mat so the whoop for those who don't know, whoop like tracks like your recovery and your sleep. And I'm on this big health kick, or I've been on this big health kick for the last few months. So the 10-year anniversary which was early this year or early this month. I wasn't drinking and I drank fairly heavily during the party, the surprise party. And my freaking recovery rate was like goose egg for like 3 days of just like getting your body like the alcohol out of your system and everything like that. So I was like, okay, well that's gonna go because I'm trying to run all these miles and do all this working out stuff, and I can't be doing it on fumes. But just the besides like the recovery aspect of it, just the ability to I looked at it more as a test too, is like the ability to like be able to build more social stamina without utilizing essentially what I was calling them PEDs, performance enhancing drugs, alcohol, in order for me to be able to perform better in those social environments. But yeah, no, the general association, especially going through this in earlier years of like not drinking and things like that, especially like in the dog training community where it seems to be pretty prevalent. It was very interesting switching off and being able to be like, oh, I'm a lot more irritable than I normally am. Like, oh, that's why, because I don't got the peds in me right now. But building that up has definitely helped in other ways as well, besides getting healthier. I think just in general, it's just like a better mind state and ability to communicate properly too.
Yeah, because you're having to do it. Like, you're having, you're forced to. Like, there's no way out. There's no grease in the wheel. And socially for me, it was it's interesting because, like, you really got to know me to know me. And people will, they see it at face value, and if they only see me on social media or they only know me in a certain context, right, they might think one thing about me. They don't know how uncomfortable I might be in certain situations, in particular social ones. There are times where I'm incredibly uncomfortable. I'm just really good at hiding it, like really good at managing my behavior. I have skills that I've developed that allow me to absolutely get the job done, whatever the job might be, and get the job done. Doesn't mean that doesn't tell you anything about how I feel.
Yeah,
And there are certain social contexts where I get social anxiety. I've had anxiety my whole life. I've always dealt with it. They've thrown freaking prescriptions at me. I've never taken a single freaking pill to this day. I believe no, like, you can work through things on your own and exercise, change your habits, like, do whatever you got to do. Um, and like, there are times, man, like, my leg will shake. And I don't mean, I'm not talking about tapping, which is, an anxious behavior. I'm talking about like so anxious and uncomfortable that there will be an uncontrollable shake. That if you looked at it, you would know, like, dude, what are you shaking for? Like that, it's that tangible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't see that. You're not going to see that here. I'm still going to be talking the way I talk. I'm still going to be doing what I need to do. The job's getting done, life of the party, talking to everybody because I do enjoy it, but I might be really uncomfortable. And for me, alcohol absolutely was a tool to make that go completely away. And I'll tell you what, I mean, it does the job. There's just the other problems that come with that, where it's like, okay, well, now it did the job. You don't need to have any more right now.
Yeah.
But it's like, not, I'm looking forward to, I'm actually excited to put myself in some of the situations where I know I'm going to feel that way, where maybe I'd have like two drinks that just kind of like smooth it out.
Yeah.
Um, I'm looking forward to those opportunities because now I'm excited about getting the reps in. I'm excited about, like, all right, cool. Like, I'm gonna sharpen the freaking sword, man. Like, it's gonna get sharper now that I've taken this crutch, or I've taken this tool that, I wouldn't say I overused it. I was talking with someone the other day, and they're like, dude, you hardly drink. Like, why would you stop drinking? Like, I don't even think I've seen you have a drink that, and like, it's not about frequency. And everyone's deal is their own deal. Like, I don't care if it was maybe twice a month. There were things I didn't like about what would happen twice a month that made me say, yeah, you know what, maybe I should think about this. Everyone, it's a sliding scale, and to each their
Yeah.
own.
Well, everyone manages their relationship with different vices differently, like people have reasons for doing things that is completely different to someone else.
Mhm.
But as long as, I guess, if everything, if you have an understanding of that and you know when to keep it in check, that's the most important thing. And obviously that's what you're doing, brother. How
Trying
is the
to.
health stuff going? Like how is what's the update on that? We getting those walks in?
Yeah, walks have been getting in. Gonna have to make some more changes with the diet. Um, Changes and execution need to change. Um, I've noticed there's a couple times where I've kind of, not kind of, where I've eaten things that I shouldn't, and just in general, not because of any specific reason, but things I just shouldn't eat. Only now, with some of the medical concerns I have, like, I'm getting punished for it way more, way
Jeez.
more than ever before. So it's like, yeah, my blood sugar was getting high, starting to develop some insulin resistance. All right, we need to cut out sugars. Duh. Like, okay. But there were a couple times recently where, you know, family gathering, social gathering, where I was like, I've been eating okay lately, and just ate whatever. I got that GERD thing going on, and
Oh,
it's getting worse. So I got to get back in the doctor, and like, I'm really trying to avoid taking drugs for it. Like, really, really, really trying to avoid that because I don't like the concept of what the drugs do.
uh,
They alter your stomach chemistry. They change the way that your, you know, things function. And like, I don't like that idea. It doesn't make sense to me. And I'm very aware that modern Western medicine will put a band-aid on one problem that causes another. Like, they don't give a crap because that just means they'll get to sell you another thing and another thing and another thing. I'm very cynical about all of that. Um, so I'm like really trying to deal with this as holistically and naturally as possible. But holy crap, man, like, the slightest if I eat things that used to never bother me, like, I can't sleep at night. I take naps because as
yeah.
soon as I lie down, it's like my stomach contents are in my esophagus and it's
Hey,
burning. Like, it takes heartburn to a whole new level. Like,
move.
and when you miss out on sleep, I had a couple times where it was like a couple days in a row. Like, I had to try to sleep sitting up. And it doesn't really work that well for me anyway. Um, Start going batty. Like, I need a full night's sleep. So I'm having to really buckle down and execute on whatever plan I put in, and I'm gonna go back to um I'm gonna go back to do another pure carnivore, probably 10, 14 days. I already started this week where it'll be only carnivore, only meats. It's not, and for those people who are like, what? Like, I don't do it for prolong. Like, it's not a lifestyle I choose to do for a long period of time. Currently, I don't feel like I have to. But that's how I like to cleanse. I like to cleanse with just meat and, red meat, eggs. That's about it. Red meat and eggs for, you know, minimum 10 days. And then I bring in the fruits. Then I bring in like a sweet potato. Then I bring, I have a couple other things, but I'll stay meat based. And I have just found when I'm really good about that, I just feel better. And this is going to be a new, now I'm not just trying to feel better. I'm trying to deal with a legitimate medical concern. I'm trying to deal with some very real health issues I'm facing. So,
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to some relief, because I really don't want to take the pills. Like, they mess with like your proton pump inhibitors, all these things. It's all about like how
Damn.
your stomach produces bile and stomach acid, which is like the stuff that digests your food. So it's like, why would I want to mess with the stuff that digests my food just because my esophagus is broken and isn't doing its job? So
You might want to look into like homeopathy stuff, man. Like that stuff. So strangely enough, I got into it through my daughter's horse trainer or her coach who's really big into it, and she like works with this company. It's something I forgot, sell something. Um, but like when I had a bunch of like issues going on, like physical stuff like that, they got me onto it, got me with that company, and they started providing like just the normal stuff. Like I was on stuff called like belladonna, this other like this HGH homeopathy, and then a couple other things for some nerve damage I have, uh, just from years of playing reckless stuff on my body. And it's like it's made a big difference, like a big like, and it's from what I'm to understand because I don't know too much about it. I just kind of listen to certain things that they've said. But what it does is it just gets like directly to the issue versus bypassing all those other issues, which creates a bunch of like negative side effects. So homeopathy, if done right and done correctly, like there's no real drawback to it other than like I think like with the HGH stuff I was taking, like you just once you're kind of recovered into like you're done, like you just basically stop taking it. And then you just bring it in as needed, but it goes straight to the problem and it fixes it and all that other stuff. So I've had a really uh good experience with it. But yeah, if you're down, I can always talk to that lady and see if there's anything for that GERD stuff.
yeah, listen, man, anything I can do to avoid taking like stuff made by the man, right? Stuff made by the man, by the government, by all of that stuff. Like, I'm just not. Oh, speaking of government, did you
Oh
see? Sorry, like, whoop, squirrel. Just saw a squirrel. Totally distracted me, but it is dog related though, so I guess that's appropriate. Did you see that post I did on Facebook about the lady that lost her arm?
no, but one thing that I've noticed, I don't know if you're having a problem with this on Facebook and on Instagram. I'm not seeing like any of my like actual like friends or followers accounts anymore. Like I went to go tag somebody in one of the like someone asked me if there's like uh a trainer in like this state, and I went to go tag the person. Like I was like, oh, this person is, and then I looked at it, I was like, dude, like, I'm not even like following them or like my or like something happened. And I've seen it like on multiple of my other accounts or like not the prime, well, because I don't run the primal page anymore, but the my like the on my page I'll look up things and I won't ever I never see your stuff. Like I'll actually have to like I have to like look up Katie. I did this morning. I'll have to look it up, and I'm like, dude, it's like okay, like I never see like any of your stuff. I rarely see any of my own staff stuff anymore. Like they have to like tag me in it, and I just see like a bunch of random things. So I got to mess around with my Instagram, and it's on my Facebook too. Like it's just a bunch of random things. So I don't know, must be something with the meta configuration that I have, or
I
something's going
I
on.
wouldn't know because I don't have a face. I don't really ever view a Facebook feed because if I'm using Chrome, I have an extension that hides my Facebook feed, like hides
Oh,
so I don't get distracted. It's a great app, by the way. But anyway, so I made this post about a news story that came across my bow, and the reason why government triggered it was because over in England they have like the government RSPCA, it's their kennel club, people that make rules about dogs. It's all tied in, right? And like you think stuff's bad here, like they're full blown, like the government's involved with pushing the agenda.
Yeah.
And you know, big credit to Jamie Penrith, a dog trainer out there who's fighting the good fight. And he posts a lot about it. And I kind of stay up to date on what's going on over there through his social media. Um, but there was a story of a woman who went to the shelter and fostered a dog. Big old bulldog, like American bulldog mix, like big mofo. I mean, it looks like an
Nice.
American bully, if anything, like a hybrid or a Scott, not Johnson type, but like just a big, giant, for lack of a better way to put it, just a giant pit bull, right? Like 100-pounder.
Yeah.
Oh, they didn't tell her that he attacked his last two handlers. He's only 18 months old, by the way.
Oh, perfect. Perfect timing.
And they push positive only, never correct a dog, never punish a dog, never tell a dog no. Everything must be cuddles and kisses because that's all dogs need is cuddles and kisses, apparently. That lady now has one arm because she lost the other one when the dog latched on and they couldn't get it off. And it was on her arm for about 20 minutes before the cops came and tased it off.
Wow. Jesus.
So now she's suing for only 200,000 pounds, which is probably, like, I don't know, 300 and some, 400 and some thousand US dollars. Um, like I'd be suing for a gajillion. But like, you know, holy frick, man. Like they lied. They didn't,
Yeah.
like, this dog had attacked its previous two handlers and they're gonna give it, and she was a petite lady. I mean, she couldn't have been 5 foot nothing. Dog probably weighed only 10, 15 pounds less than her. And we know dog pound for pound, like I don't want a 100-pound dog to have to wrestle with.
Yeah.
And they're done that. Like, no, I'm not up. I really don't want to deal with that. Um,
Yeah.
Imagine being a petite, inexperienced lady with trying to deal with that, and there it's just so wild to me. It's so wild that they push this narrative and they push these ideologies that create dangerous, dangerous problems. Like, people are getting fucked up. And like, nope, let's just, oh, you got a pinch collar on, you're gonna burn in hell. Oh, you got an e-collar on, you're a horrible person. Meanwhile, like, people are losing body parts.
Well, I mean, going back to what you really said, I'm not a petite, nor am I a lady, and I got some experience. And I definitely, sometimes as enjoyable it is to wrestle around with our 100-pound dogs when they're biting me in a bite suit. I live with the consequences of that after, with bruising and everything like that, let alone getting your arm ripped off. But it's crazy, man. Like the amount of like BS that I'll call it like the left side, the positive reinforcement, people put out there just to kind of, like put their movement on or narrative or whatever the hell that they're doing. It's pretty insane when you look at it, like the amount of dogs they euthanize because the training doesn't, or the dog doesn't fit their training style, is insane. Like the amount of people that the trolls go on there and talk crap online and say all this stuff about prong collars, e-collars, the dog looking suppressed on a 1 minute video that has probably some sound over it. Like the amount of stuff that they put on social media is already insane, let alone the lack of understanding of the evidence that's out there. Like the lady who loses her arm, or people, dogs where people are getting consistently attacked. And, we deal with this when we talk to people on the phone, like, oh, my dog's already bitten, like my son, my daughter, my grandpa, my brother, mom, dad, all this stuff punctured, but like, I don't want to crate them. Like, that's mean. Like, I don't want to put a prong collar. Does that hurt them? Like, the e-collar, I don't want to shock my dog. I was like, well, you're not shocking your dog. Just the I don't I'll use the term ignorance, the pure ignorance of most of the people that are getting spoon fed all this like positive reinforcement BS. And it's not necessarily the people that are who are just like, because people just want their dog to be happy, right? They just want to
And there's
live. It's
nothing
just,
wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with
yeah,
these. They come from noble intentions.
yeah, the intentions are great, but the transparency from the positive reinforcement side isn't there.
Oh, they
And
flat
it's
out freaking lie.
Yeah, it's like the one of the most amazing dolphin noise, and I use the F dolphin noise as substitute for F word here on Drinks and Dogs and anything else I'm on now that people have to edit because they get mad at me. The amount of dolphin noise like BS that's out there when it comes to, or the term that I always hear, it's science based. Like, well, yeah, when they get a correction, a negative chemical is released into the brain, and like, yeah, it's a negative. I was like, well, no shit. Like, of course, when you give them a positive thing, you're going to have a positive response. If you put your hand on a stove when it's hot, yeah, you're going to get a negative response. Like, we're talking about obvious facts. But am I going to put my hand on the dolphin noise stove again after that hurt a little bit? No, I'm not talking about burning your dog. I'm talking about just associative based learning. That got me this, which was cool. This got me that, which wasn't cool. And I don't really want to do that. And you don't have to correct them in any form of harsh way, but in a way that they understand it so the behavior doesn't consistently go. But that's the problem with the positive reinforcement aspect of it, is that the sounding of positive reinforcement, the theory, not necessarily the application, but the thought process of it sounds all great. It's a great selling point. You're not ruffling any feathers, but you are creating ignorant following, or people who may not really understand, the actual ins and outs of dog training. You're creating an ignorant following of people who will now continually push, the positive bullshit, and it's putting more dogs in danger. It's putting more people in danger. It's euthanizing more dogs than any balance trainer I've ever talked to. Even some of the bad balance trainers out there, they probably have less youth cases than than most of the good positive reinforcement trainers out there. And then guess what too, is that the people that get washed out, the dogs get washed out in positive reinforcement, end up in the shelter where they develop more issues or get euthanized there too. So yeah, the positives agenda, which I don't know if you noticed earlier this year, they kind of hit the internet hard. It's almost like they come in waves where they start going off of like the e-collar agenda or other crap like
Mm-hmm.
that. But people can say what they want. Positive enforcement can say what they want. Uh, do I am I against it? Absolutely, I'm not against it. I'm not against positive enforcement. I'm against positive enforcement only, and only sticking to that. I think that dog training itself is something where it's kind of like it's a mix and match of things that work for that individual dog, learning and knowing all the different methodologies and theories, and knowing when to apply it or when not to apply it to a certain dog is extremely important. But pigeonholing yourself to one theory, and I'll use theory because theoretically, like, yeah, it sounds great. Applicationally, it doesn't apply to everything, and it's probably been debunked more than anything else, that using positive reinforcement just in general to have consistent behavior, especially with dogs who, like that dog that ripped that lady's arm off, who have bitten other handlers, it's probably not going to be the best way to go to, best route or method to go to when it comes to those type of cases. So yeah.
It's and neither one of us are saying anything that probably the majority of people watching this don't already know. You know, it's not about positive reinforcement, like you said.
Yeah.
Positive reinforcement isn't even it's a thing. It's a consequence. It's not a way of training. It's not a method of training. It's not a type of training. It's a thing you do in training. The
Yeah.
term but has then been taken into and been used within an ideology. The ideology, which goes by several labels, but the ideology of never make a dog uncomfortable, never make a dog feel stressed. That ideology isn't even a sound theory. It doesn't even make sense as a theory to anyone who can think about it without emotion, let alone anybody who understands how brain chemistry works and the psychology of stress. Because, if we look at stress in general, it's not a bad thing.
Nope.
If we look at stress in general, it isn't even enough information because we have to look at the difference between distress and eustress. Some people don't even know that there's different types of stress. Eustress, the excitement you feel, it's actually a stress response. And then even looking at distress, not all distress is bad. In fact, all of us thinking organisms, especially mammals, we need stress. Our brains are actually built to be able to process certain types of stress, and we thrive when there's certain types of stress. Because you know why? Because in nature, there's unavoidable stress. So you had to get good at it. You had to create organisms that actually thrived with it. What do I mean? Robert Sapolsky uh, wrote an interesting book. I'm like a part of the way through. He's written several books, but one of the things is like why zebras don't get ulcers. Interesting book. But learning where he explains about stress. And there's, I've listened to some other wonderful lectures and read some, lots of good information and analogies to use. So for example, there's periodic or episodic stress, which is like something crazy is happening right this second. Holy shit. Okay, it's over. And then there's what a lot of us experience in our lives, constant medium level stress every day. One will help you thrive. The other will mess you up. Guess which one helps you thrive? Holy crap. Okay, we're good. That's good for you. That keeps you healthy. It releases things, chemicals, neurotransmitters, hormones, all that jazz. Let's look at wild animals. In particular, prey animals. Like let's take the zebra. Zebras, they're not dropping dead from stress. But let's look at the kind of stress that a zebra might face in his daily activities. He could get freaking eaten. He could have a giant cat, which I'm not a fan of cats. I think they're freaking evil. There's a sound bite for you to the media team, and only it's a really big one that all it does is kill stuff. And at any moment in time, this lion can come out and grab the zebra by the throat. Or forget a lion. What if the zebra is taking a sip from the water and one of them freaking dinosaurs comes out, those armor-plated dinosaurs called Nile crocodiles, and latches on and takes half his face off? Like, that could happen at any point in time.
Yep.
It's not dramatic. It's probably happening right now, right this second. There are numerous animals in the Serengeti Plain or Ngorongoro Crater who are getting disemboweled as we speak. It's happening right now. And to the zebra who got away, he ain't even thinking about it. He's getting ready to go get it on with a zebra that's in season. He's, chilling, hanging out with the other zebras. Like, he's like, oh, yeah, whatever. They're not like all walking around like, I can't take the stress. Because that's episodic stress. It's actually good for you. It's good for the immune system. What isn't good is nonstop, constant, low-level stress. So when we think about dogs in a human home, I mean, right now, more than ever before, reactivity, separation anxiety, just constant anxiety. Dogs, like that's what everyone's talking about. And the aggression that comes along with it. You think it's a coincidence that it has come at a time where everyone's saying, do not create episodic stress in the dog? Meaning, don't give the dog a correction. Don't teach the dog to never do this. Don't allow the dog to hit the hot wire to teach him from jumping over the fence. Like, don't like all these, don't create episodic stress that teaches a lesson. No, instead, create this bubble that isn't foolproof because you still got to take the dog outside. Or maybe you don't take the dog outside. So the bubble is internal. And now the dog's stressed because he never gets outside. And the dog thinks they're in control of everything because you've never told them no. And now you go to work and the dog can't handle it. Like, that's a sick, suffering dog. That dog that's experiencing this constant level of anxiety and stress because you didn't want to create a moment of episodic stress that the dog is actually wired, just like we are and all these other animals, to take, learn from, and thrive.
Well,
Like,
that's the thing
it's
too.
not rocket science, man.
Well, I mean, like that's a because obviously, like we're hands on with dogs pretty much every single day, and like talking to clients about that. When it comes to explaining, because a lot of what a client's thought process is, it's exactly what you're saying, but they don't really grasp understanding that without proper structure, without a form of a balance training, whether it's balance more on the positive, negative, whatever it may be, without really proper forms of communication for that dog is living in a consistent form of stress because and anxiety because they don't really have any clear form of direction from the person they've been genetically and bred to listen and thrive from routines. So they're living in a consistent form of stress all the time versus one learning, a handful of learning moments that create proper behavioral response. And if you ever notice that, I tell my clients that, like when we do, because I have a lot of private clients right now, but when I'm, working with them, like, certain stressful situations happen, and next, the dog's calm, chill. It's all right. It went through it. Now it's okay. It's fine. And the dog's perfectly fine. Like, oh yeah, I see what's going on here. It's like versus without using forms of corrections. I'll use an example of a dog who's heavily reactive, right? Dog's at the end of its line, constantly panting. Its freaking eyes are bloodshot. It's looks like it's freaking out the whole entire walk. Because there's no form of correction. It's just losing spine and everything like that when we first get it. Go into some training, do a couple, reward some engagement, correct some pre-reactive behavior that leads to bigger reactions. Dog has a couple incidents where it gets a little bit of correction and it, gets like, okay, well, that kind of sucked a little bit. That rest of the walk, the dog's calm, chill, understanding, looking for engagement because it's getting its reward. Understanding like, oh, reacting this way is going to get me a correction that was not necessarily desired, but the overall experience of the dog is now great. They're looking at the handler for like, oh, hey, like, okay, like I'm engaging. This is what you wanted, right? Kind of thriving in that life where they had a couple of those, what you call the episodic, stressors like happened, but the rest of the dog's life is now calm because they've had those learning experiences and they're completely fine. And then the handler's like, oh, I get what you're saying. I was like, yeah, I was like, your dog, it's believe it or not, but your dog loves that balance. And the reason why your dog has that one transition of that phase where they're like, oh, Fluffy doesn't look like it's, having a great time. I was like, yes, because the dog is now relearning its life and understanding that this is what, is making them feel a lot more well-rounded as an animal and as what they are. And it's kind of conducive to, them genetically and them just as a being and as well. So now, the dogs kind of getting through it, but getting those people to kind of turn that corner and understanding that, hey, like your dog does need a form of balance. Like there's absolutely need a form of balance in order to kind of have, that relieving of the stress. And I'm talking about your general pet, the people who walk down the street, once a day with their dog and, the dog is free roaming the house all the time and destroying things or developing, I guess what was that other type of consistent stress you called?
I didn't
The
have a name for it. I just made it. I
that
just went, eh.
Yeah, the mirror stress that now causing the mirror stress for the handler and for them for the dog as well.
And this is like everything we just said, by the way, completely applies to us. Like all of it. I know I enjoyed listening to Rogan talk about it. Like he went in on like, we're still wired the way cave people were. Like we're still wired the way our ancestors were, who like they were like the zebra. They had to worry about getting eaten by something when they were picking berries. Like they had to worry about dying every time they went to go acquire meat sources. They had a constant, like, there was very real life and death struggles that took place. I'm willing to bet no one was popping Zoloft back then or even needed to.
Yeah.
And, it's not a coincidence that we're seeing more and more dogs suffering from general anxiety, separation anxiety, aggression that's coming from the inability to deal with frustration, the inability to deal with things outside of one's control. It's not a coincidence that while we're seeing this with dogs, we have a growing population of people who are more fragile than your finger after leaving a band-aid on it for 6 months through the summer. Like, it's if you looked at our grandparents and great grandparents, the things that bother us, they'd be like, are you kidding me right now? Are you kidding? And I always think of like the cliche thing that we always think our grandparents are going to say. When I was your age, I walked 6 miles to school and I fought off packs of dogs and wolverines to get there in the winter when it was -20. That's a cliche. It's a joke, but there's merit to it. There's
Yeah.
some weight to it because they're proving a point. They're like, you know what are you upset about? Because like I dealt with stuff like not knowing whether or not we were going to eat. Dealt with stuff
Yeah.
like not knowing whether or not we were going to have the lights on. Dealt with like the things that previous generations dealt with made them resilient. And the easier things get, inevitably, the weaker, the easier it is to get weaker if you're not constantly seeking pressure, if you're not constantly seeking what, that's a very personal topic for me because I don't like the way in the past I've dealt with stress. I wanted to be, I identified some major room for growth in my personal resiliency. Let me put it that way. Once I got into like my
That
mid 30s.
like that's like that quote. That's funny. I heard that's one of the same things on the Rogan shows, but it was like the quote that always like comes to mind when I hear stuff like that now is like, what tough times create great men create great times create weak men create tough times. And we're in that weak man stage right now for sure. I mean, and if you well, another thing before we wrap this up, because obviously we're running a little bit tight on time here. But if you notice too, with the influx in pharmaceutical drugs being used in people, it's even becoming more so. And not to say it wasn't like light before, but now just talking to people like when they go to their vets, they're like, oh, they're on all these other type of like medications, and it's becoming, especially after the pandemic. Holy shit! I
They're
would
coming from the shelters. They're coming from the
with
shelters
meds.
already on trazodone.
Yep, it is insane. But that's gonna be another topic for once we get back on track here, Katie. With
Yeah, let's talk about drugs next time.
all right, so let's wrap it up. Let me give a shout out to our sponsor real quick because I haven't the whole entire podcast, and I should have when you brought up your fanny pack. Ray Allen. So
Yeah, they got it. Yeah.
did you get one yet? Has Wilson made you yours yet? Matt Wilson,
No.
the fanny pack king, man. You better get on it for a KD here. But shout out to Ray Allen, the only sponsor of Drinks and Dogs and Canine Street League. Make sure you check him out, rayallen.com/K9SL. And then for a discount, use Primal10, all caps. So big shout out to the Ray Allen team, Matt Wilson, Billy, all those guys. KD, I know we say this all the time, but where can people get a hold of you?
At KD Matthews at 1T. I know media, they've been doing good. They'll put it right up in there so you can see it. Or head over to my website, Socratic Canine, spelled out Canine. That's the best place to find me. Instagram, really. I'm on Facebook, but Instagram is that's my jam.
And then Instagram pretty much for me. And for myself, it is the Mike Jones _PC, I believe. And then the PTV _network or network _PTV. So one of those things, check it out. I'm sure there'll be a bunch of stuff
There'll
all
be
over this
links
edited
everywhere.
version. Yeah, you'll get it. But again, guys, there won't be a link to this, so I'll have to say it. Make sure you guys are liking the videos or disliking them. Let us know what topics you like. This is an open communication, type of podcast that Katie and I do where we have these conversations. And, if you have any questions, comment on the video. If you have any thoughts, comment on the video. We can bring it up. And again, we're as much passion goes through these conversations. We're very open-minded. We do like to have conversations and talk to people and see what they're thinking. Or if you have a topic you like to talk about us, make sure you comment on the videos. So yeah, like, subscribe, comment, follow, share with your friends. This is available on YouTube and all basically wherever you get your podcast from. So this was episode 36. KD,
36.
there. I appreciate you, brother, and we'll be talking next week.
All righty. See ya.
Have a good one.